Hi, Siddharth.
Hi.
Hello, Bidisha. Welcome to our conversation on faith. In fact, we'd like to have some interesting perspectives on faith from intellectuals, from artists, from uh, different people in different strata of society, so that we can get inspired. So, Bidisha has always told me that she has had a long association with you, and you've had a very interesting journey in faith. So over to you, Bidisha. I would like you to introduce Siddharth, Dr. Siddharth first, and then we can take it from there.
Hi. What a great pleasure and honor to have. I'll just go over. He has a very elaborate profile, but I'll just go over some brief points that I would like to point out to the world. Siddharth is a young experimental physicist who is been investigating a lot of new age quantum technology based physics, fundamental physics problems. And he's especially interested in defect spins for quantum technology, concurrently exploring the potential of artificial neural networks for optimal quantum control. Besides that, one of the biggest things is he's a big time educationalist, and he's all the time looking for initiatives that he takes to make sure the fever of education is spread well. Also, some of the key achievements, there are too many to spell out for him. He has given invited talks all over the world, and he was working at the just before coming and joining IIT Madras a month back. Congratulations on that, Siddharth. He was working at the at the London Center for Technology, University College London, UK. And he was investigating optically active spin defects for quantum technology there. Before that, he had a very elaborate career at the Department of Physics at City College of New York, where he studied the charge and spin dynamics in diamond. And you have no idea what kind of recognition and work he has done. He was highlighted by Smithsonian Magazine, Business Insider, World Economic Forum. Some of the few things that I can mention is turning diamond defects into long-term 3D data storage was such a eye opener for many of us. And in data storage, in Nature Reviews, Material Research Highlights, his work was highlighted in New York Times and featured at different key science websites all across optical societies of America and the world. So I'm really proud to say that Siddharth and I have had really a long association, not in terms of only being collaborators and working together, but also, in fact, in many other discourses that we continue to have, because I have known Siddharth and his area of interest are really diverse. Siddharth, if you would go ahead and tell us a little bit about your journey when you were in India as a master student in Pune and all the things that you did with Gyan Prabodhini. And in a way, I would say, I'll just take a moment to say that we see often that many scientists in their later careers become really, they do a lot of science through their active career. And then they later in the career, they become quite philosophical and they talk about spiritualism and they talk about a lot of things outside science. But in a way, I feel Siddharth's direction has been a little uh, different. He started like that almost. He started with a lot of questions, spiritualism, and he did a lot of things to even question faith and experience it directly. He had participated in many, many activities. And then slowly he moved into a more logical and scientific path. Right now, he's doing hardcore science, active researcher. And that's why I wanted to invite him as one of our first guests who can put some limelight on this initiative that we have tried to take on, Siddharth. Let's talk about your journey a little bit. If you would tell us how it was for you to grow up in India, like your your undergraduate studies, your master's studies, and all the things that you did at that time, and a little bit about your journey through faith. Then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. First of all, Vidisha, I mean, uh, I shouldn't be here. I think, but anyway, I mean, thanks for inviting. I'm really honored to talk to you guys. Yeah, I mean, it was a very long introduction, but I haven't achieved much. When I was in India, as Vidisha suggested, I was mostly interested actually. I mean, I should say two aspects. First is education. I always loved education. Actually, after completing my master's, I decided to be a high school teacher for 2 years. So I was a high school teacher for 2 years, and then I thought that maybe I should explore this PhD angle of science as well. And then I decided to go to New York and did my PhD, and then I've been doing research since then. The reason I mean, I'm always kind of intrigued with how things are, what things are, why we are here, and I mean all the big questions. I'm always intrigued with that. And I feel like everyone is, all my students have always been asking those questions, and that's why I like to spend time with students and people who want to learn more stuff, who have these inquisitive attitude. I really like to be with people who have this kind of attitude. So that's why I like to work with students. And the same kind of attitude kind of took me to US and UK and in research, because it's just like I just have lots of questions that I wanted to get answers for. And I think it's all about exploration. That's what I've learned. Um, what what I've learned, I mean, I haven't learned much, but what I've learned is that what you should do is you should enjoy the journey. Answers are at the end of the day most probably irrelevant, or you will find more questions always. So yeah, so it's all about journey is what I've learned, and that's why I've kept exploring. As a student, I was exploring. As a high school teacher, I was exploring. As a PhD student, I was exploring, and now as a newly joined assistant professor, I feel I should keep exploring as much as I can.
So why don't you tell us about your time in, as she was mentioning, Jnana Prabodaya. You were teaching personality development to children at a stage,
Yes.
and you were also in a journey of your own, understanding spirituality. So can you just throw some light on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a school known as Jnana Prabodhini. It's in Pune. I mean, the main school is in Pune, but it's a non-governmental organization focused on education and even health and other aspects of society. And the idea is to actually uh, kind of motivate people to uh, to do something for society. Uh, but in doing so, the the idea is to actually use all the spiritual kind of philosophical baggage or knowledge, whatever you want to call it, that we have got. And I was in that school, and then after that, uh, how should I put it? I mean, I was never a person of uh, faith in regular sense, I would say. Uh, I have never visited any temples when I was, I don't remember, at least, maybe I did. But I was always spiritual. I always thought that there is something more to the world rather than just this physical world that I can see, I can feel. There has to be something beyond it. There has to be some purpose. Why I'm here, why everyone is here. What's the purpose of my life? What's the purpose of the universe? All these questions, they seem to require more than just the physical world. And that's why I felt like I was always spiritual, but that did not, I did try to actually, I mean, there were a couple of attempts where I tried to really understand what we call Dvaita, I mean, where like going to Wari, like what Vidisha mentioned, like going to places where people go for worshipping, and people have this very what you call devoted attitude towards it, and where you actually try to forget everything and just focus on certain aspects. I tried doing that. I wouldn't say my mind is trained for doing that. So I mean, we can talk more about my
Is that
experiences in
mostly out
Wari
of
and
curiosity?
all those things. We can talk about that. But what I would say is that all these questions kind of kept motivating me. And what I found out when I started looking at myself is that the kind of person that I am, uh, I like to kind of uh, knowledge is the key for me. Every person is different, but at least for me, I thought that I want to really understand things. And so even when I was trying to understand it when I was in India, I started reading books rather than going to temples and trying to understand what people are saying. I started reading books. I read Vivekananda, I read Arvinda, and I mean, I tried all those things. I tried understanding what these people are trying to say. Uh, a bit of Buddhism. I tried to get some flavors from that as well. But that's how I kind of decided to plan my journey. And obviously, when I went to US, I planned it in a different way. I mean, I did it in a different way, trying to understand the physical world. And the hope is that once you understand physical, maybe you'll be able to understand.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you in this context, because it is quite lived experiences for you, because you have really gotten into trying to investigate it, is the word I would use. What is to you? How would you put faith into context? Like, what is faith for you, or how has it changed over the years? Like the concept of faith, if it has evolved over the years, and what is it now for you? What was it before, and what is it now? If
I
there is time.
mean, if I see it right now, looking back at myself, obviously the reason why I said that I do not consider myself as a person having faith is most probably because of the family values that I grew up with. My parents, maybe, I mean, I don't think they were very religious, at least. And then that kind of, that would be the reason why I do not believe. So I used to call myself a non-believer. I should not, I don't want to call myself an atheist, agnostic, or anything like that. At least right now, I say I am a non-believer, which means that I generally want to, if someone tells me something, I wouldn't say kind of believe it right away. And that's why I call myself a non-believer. I want to test it. I want to maybe read more about it, try to do something about it, and then I'll come to a conclusion. Obviously, when I say that, I understand that not a single person can live this life without biases and beliefs. I mean, our brain, I work with artificial neural networks, which are kind of uh, they have been developed based on the way our brain functions in a way. And the way our brain works is that we train it. The way we train it is by looking at the world outside. So it's initially when a baby is born, the baby doesn't understand the world. but then slowly they look at the world, and that's how their brain gets trained. When I say trained, what is happening is that you look at a particular situation like 10 times, and then 11th time when you encounter similar scenario, you have some judgment already. You have some expectations already. So that's what I mean by training. You kind of train yourself, and that's why I feel like this is fact based belief, but still it's a belief, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that it has not happened to me 10 times. It's not going to happen to me anymore. It can happen. Something very different can happen, and that's why I feel like each person has to live with set of beliefs and biases. So I'm not saying that I'm not totally non-judgmental, or but I try to. I mean, this is how I describe myself. And uh, I was always rational, I believe. I always wanted to understand how things are and stuff like that. So I always liked, and that's again Nyanthrodini kind of instilling ideas, like asking questions and stuff about things around you. And so that's
So what are the things you when you were seeking answers, what is it you just wanted to have the knowledge and you went behind the knowledge you wanted to, what is it you read, what were you following and what were you trying to understand?
Yes. So let's say the biggest question is, why are we here? Is something that I kept asking myself even when I was doing my undergrad, my master's, something like that. And initially, in order to understand that question, I mean, that's when I started reading all these books. And I feel back then I was quite influenced by Swami Vivekananda's kind of literature and whatever he wrote about especially about Advaita, or he used to call it Vedanta Tatvajnana. And I mean, so basically it's related to what kind of exists. I mean, he had all these examples about the experience that you have when you're sleeping versus experience that you have when you're awake. So there is a Siddharth who's experiencing something when there is no input from outside world. So these are all like different. So I feel I kind of understood what he was saying again, because the language in which he spoke kind of resonated with the way I was thinking. Like again, some rational attitude. And so the question why I'm here requires lots of answers beforehand, like why are other things here, what is this material world, and all those questions. My feeling is that these questions are, some of these questions might not be even valid questions. I mean, you can ask whatever questions you want to ask, right? In any language you can make up any question, right? I mean, whatever the language, like using the grammatical rules, you can make up any questions. That doesn't mean that that question has a valid answer to it. I mean, yeah, the question might be completely so. It's a journey. I'm just trying to understand maybe the purpose uh, is not a valid question. The purpose of life is not a valid question, maybe because purpose is something that our brain actually kind of cooks up, maybe. So I'm just trying to understand how we work, why I feel what I feel, the subjective experiences that we are having. Is why are we supposed to have these subjective experiences where you can think of a person who, I mean, think of an object, let's not call it a person, think of an object who behaves exactly like Siddharth, but does not have any inner structure to it. There are no subjective experiences or something like that. You can think of such an entity. I'm not saying that it's possible, but you can think of such an entity like a detector, let's say. We can think of a very simple scenario. Just a detector, a light detector. My eyes are kind of a spatial kind of light detectors. But a red, when I see red, when I see yellow, I have a feeling of red. I have a feeling of yellow. And does a detector has this feeling of yellow, feeling of red? I mean, these are questions that are very difficult to even, I would say, spell. But I feel these questions give meaning to life. I mean, if you remove feeling from our life, then I don't see any purpose in it. So I'm just trying to understand why there is feeling, and then you have this problem of consciousness, this subjective experience from outside. Even in the only experience that I've got is my own subjective experience. I can see you guys, I can feel this world. This is the only direct experience of the world that I've got. And but that's it. I mean, apart from that, I believe you are also conscious just because you kind of uh, you behave exactly like I do, but I do not have direct kind of link to your consciousness either. So it's like a very I feel like I'm talking about a mystic, but these are all the questions that I was always interested in. And initially, I thought that maybe these spiritual, like maybe some kind of meditation would give us some answers about it. And that's why I got interested in Arvinda as well, who actually focuses a lot on meditation and various meditative activities and how you can actually go beyond yourself. Like you are trying to in order to understand the world, you have to go beyond yourself. But how do you go beyond yourself? Then you have to meditate, and you need to find something that is like some entity, some Atman that is actually present in everything and is everything, but you cannot define it and stuff like that. And you can reach that kind of world with meditation. But then things have changed over the past few years. Obviously, I have learned a bit of neuroscience. I'm doing artificial neural networks and AI. So,
So my big question is this right here, Siddharth. Does it collide? Does it collide with each other? Like your scientific knowledge and all this rather non-descriptive experiential things, do they not collide? I feel that that's a very important question to ask.
yeah, they do not collide because I was, as I mentioned before, I'm not religious at all.
I know that.
So they don't collide as far as all my. I do not believe in any rituals or anything like that. So as far as that is concerned, and sometimes it's easy to have this collision if you have very specific things. If you have very vague things, then these collisions are actually difficult. What I mean by that, let me explain. So in the US, there are these people called creationists, right? So they believe
So
like
you're breaking. You're breaking. There are some people
who are known as creationists, who believe that the earth was formed 6,000 years ago. And now, if you are a scientist, then there is an obvious kind of disagreement with this kind of philosophy.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot live with that. It's a very difficult disagreement. But as I was saying, that I don't like flat earthers and stuff like that. There are lots of these societies and stuff, and there are obvious disagreements. But since I don't believe in the religious uh, kind of dogma, I, I have never found these very kind of what you call like clear cut discontinuities. As far as consciousness and all the other problems are concerned, even in the neuroscience community, you would find people who are actually talking about what you call like all pervasive consciousness and stuff like that. I mean, even people who are studying neuroscience, people who have legitimate theories about, like quantitative theories about neuroscience, they are talking about things like that. Because when it comes to subjective experience, obviously material scientist, and what you can, so there are lots of things that you still can explain. I think you can explain lots of things with current science. There are lots of things that you can't explain with current science. But I don't want to play that card as well. I mean, many people of faith generally play that card.
Yes.
That is generally known as God of gaps or something like that.
Can you give
Sometimes
us
you know,
one example of what you could say, so that people like me can relate to what you're saying? There are a lot
yeah,
of things
so,
which you can prove, lot of things which you cannot prove. Can you just give one example?
yeah, so let's say back in 1900, initially when Darwin put together a theory of evolution, people were very skeptic about it. Like religious people were very skeptic about it. I'm talking about Western world, not in India, because when this question was asked to Vivekananda, he was like, obviously we believe in evolution. He had no issues with that. But let's say Western culture, it was a shock for them. And you cannot at the moment, you don't know where how the life began, right? You don't know how things started on earth. Let's say, let's if we stick to earth, we don't know how things started on earth. Evolution can more or less take you from a single cell organism to the world that we see, right? But we don't know how the single cell organism started. We don't know how the DNA came to be. I mean, there are people have like theories to explain that, but nothing has been proven. But every day we are making progress. Every day we can do simulations. We can find in labs people are doing experiments where they are putting together different chemicals to show that you can actually indeed just by looking at what is more stable, you can actually go from uh, chemistry to biology. Because what biology is that what is stable, basically whatever survives in the environment becomes biology in a way, going from chemistry to biology. So all these, there are these all these questions where you need to at the moment, there are no scientific theories. I mean, there are scientific theories but not proven
Proven
facts.
one. Hmm.
So, and people have their own uh, uh, kind of ideas that they like, right? And people are trying to pursue different ideas, and maybe it becomes a bit of issue of faith at that point. But what I'm trying to say is that you cannot argue that because science does not understand something, it won't understand something in coming 50, 100, 200, 500 years. We have just started. This whole process of scientific exploration is fairly new to us. I mean, if we say that Galileo started this, then the whole process of scientific methodology, obviously, if you go back to, let's say, Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta, and all those like Indian philosophers back then, they were doing science, but the kind of scientific methodology that we are following in last 300-400 years, it was established by this Western culture, right? Galileo, Newton, and all these people. And it has been only 400 years, and we kind of understand what happened after 10 to the what, like minus 33 seconds after Big Bang
Hmm.
to now, which is kind
You
of
have to tell a
crazy.
little bit of Big Bang because many of our audience will probably not be aware of it.
Uh, yeah, when I say Big Bang, it's how our universe began. So there is a theory popularly known as
Theoretical, of course. Yeah.
theoretical, yeah, Big Bang, but cosmology has become a fairly a mainstream science actually. So when I say cosmology, what I mean by that is that you can send telescopes, satellites, and you can look at the universe. You can look at the light that we are receiving from all these stars, galaxies. And the interesting thing is that when you look at these lights, you're also looking in the past because the light is traveling at a certain speed. So if you look far enough, then the light that has reached your telescope would have taken like billions of years. And from that, from doing all sorts of analysis, you can figure out that our universe began around 13.8 billion years ago. And how did it begin? And people have all these theories, and people call it Big Bang cosmology. There is this inflationary model and all sorts of things, clever ways of actually explaining everything that we see. Like we have all sorts of different satellites and telescopes that are looking at different parts of electromagnetic spectrum. So we can only see a small part of electromagnetic spectrum. We can only see red to blue. That's the only spectrum that we can actually see. But then there is a huge part of electromagnetic spectrum that our instruments can detect, and basically we are just gathering huge amounts of data from all sorts of instruments, and we are trying to explain it. And people are coming with different theories. Some theories have some hypotheses that they can test when you get some kind of data, and that's how you can actually, that's how science works. Basically you come up with some hypothesis, then you get some data either by doing experiments or you collect data from universe, and then you try to see if your hypothesis matches with the data that you have. If it matches, then good. If it doesn't, then you need to tweak your hypothesis until you can match to the data that you have obtained, right? So that's how science kind of ballpark science works.
Take a pause here, and I would like to say something. So that's why probably science is also so robust, because it is open to constant modification, remodification, analysis, reanalysis, cross-analysis. And what I would really question here, a big important question, is something like faith or a belief system that we often are, we would like to, it's a, as you said, it's like a human emotion, it's like a feeling that we would want to perceive. Then at that point, probably it's questionable how robust it can be. Is it possible to, cross question that? Is it possible to have the courage to see the gaps in it? And like we do in science, we do it kind of ruthlessly, and that's why it's so dependable if it are.
Yeah.
So my question to both of you actually is this: how do you see faith in this context? Like both to Appa, because I know that you would come from a very solidly being in faith kind of lived experience, and to Siddharth, who you are so questioning and so open to questioning. Where do you think faith stands a chance in terms of other than being an emotion? Like how does it stand a chance in terms of being robust and it being okay to be questioned? If Siddharth, you want to start, and then maybe Appa can say.
Okay. Yeah. So something that I can say about it is that feelings, first person perspective, is very difficult to even study with science. I mean, not difficult, it's impossible at the moment.
It's impossible, yeah.
But you can look at the correlations, right? So when I'm dreaming, you can just hook up some electrodes, look at my brain, and look at my activity, like what brain is doing. When I'm meditating, maybe you can look at my brain activity. And people have found the correlations, right? People know when you are actually let's say, taking all these drugs, the reason why people take drugs is that because they have effects on how the neurons are actually firing. Or, I mean, drugs is a negative aspect of it, but let's say meditation, the reason why meditation works, at least if you ask me or a neuroscientist, they would say it's because it kind of controls the way your neurons are firing. And that means you can control your emotions, you can control the feelings. So in a way, what I'm getting at is that although you don't have you don't know what I am feeling, you can actually find the correlations in my brain. So at least there is a one-to-one, there can be a one-to-one mapping. So in principle, the reason why I'm talking about this is that let me give you a very simple example. So let's say there is a person who's in coma, okay, who can't do anything, who can't say anything, who can't even move his hands or legs or like anything. Okay, so there is no way to know if for a physician there is no way to know if this person has any feeling inside. I mean, just not because this person cannot talk to us, that doesn't mean that that person is empty inside. Maybe there is something going on inside, right? How would you know that? So people have actually developed kind of instruments to actually look at the neural activity for a person who's in coma, who's in vegetative state, blah blah blah, to understand if something is happening inside, or if there is nothing happening inside. It just, I mean, to us, it feels like a person, but actually there is nothing inside. So in a way, I think you can do this.
So what did they find? Did they find that there's any activity in the person?
Yeah. So obviously, what is happening is your brain is controlling your body, right? So neuronal activity is persistent. Even when you are sleeping, uh, there is a different activity. But what I mean by activity is not only just the activity that controls your bodily functions. I was talking about activity that gives you this inner experience, consciousness, right?
So a person in coma has this?
Not coma, but vegetative state can have a bit of, I would say, conscious activity. And when you are dreaming, so that there is some correlation in your neuronal firings. People call it the activity that happens in brain. So, so first of all, that's how you can study it. That's one thing. And the other perspective is very different. Now, if you look at evolution, when people behaves in a certain way, let's not go with the behavior. Let's say a particular animal behaves in a certain way. You can, in principle, track why that would have happened and why evolution would actually support that particular behavior, right? And that's what I feel is one way of explaining why we behave the way we do. You get my point? Like why we are altruistic, why we behave in certain, like why do we get angry in certain cases, why we feel the kind of kinship with people with whom I kind of share large chunk of my DNA. I mean, all these things, I mean, you can explain all these things from an evolutionary point of view, in a way. And people are trying to even explain why consciousness as a part of, like, if I'm going to be in this world with other people, other animals, with nature, then I need to first of all kind of simulate all of them in my head, which is what my consciousness is doing. And I'm part of that simulation. That's how people try to explain consciousness. So all these feelings, I mean, I'm not taking side of any of these perspectives. It's still very difficult for me to understand this subjective experience. But then comes the theory where people say that actually there is this, the deepest layer is made out of consciousness, and then everything evolves from it. Okay, that's actually a legitimate neuroscientific model at the moment. Okay, so at the base, everything is, there is a person called Philip Goff, who's a philosopher in the UK, who has this, I'm missing this word, what is known as, I mean, it's kind of a Buddhist or even like a Advaita Tattvajnana, I would say, where everything kind of is a manifestation of this underlying consciousness, and then everything comes from this. So even a charge of an electron is what we can measure, but that charge is actually its consciousness. The charge is a property of consciousness in a way. A spin is a property of consciousness in a way. So that's how people put it. Now the argument, materialist argument against this argument is that you are not adding anything to the world by saying that. Occam's razor is what people in science actually uh, use. What I mean by that is that you don't want to add additional stuff that does not explain a particular phenomenon. The, the, the electron is moving from point A to point B. If everything can be explained using electromagnetic fields like quantum field theory, and if that is sufficient, why do you need to bring this additional underlying whatever, like consciousness is not completely understandable, I would say. But again, if you ask me, I'm completely open to all possibilities. The reason is because I feel like we can right now we can just keep asking questions and there are no solutions at the moment, at least in the scientific world. So I'm completely open to any of these possibilities, and that's how I feel about all these questions that you asked. And I would be very much interested in how Appa actually thinks about all these.
Yeah, it is it's something which is there are so many times in my lectures and saying I've spoken about the flow of energy being elevated to a state where I could actually be very be one with God, I would say, in many ways, because I am a singer, and when I sing, there are many occasions where I feel this union very strong, and I feel very at many times I feel I'm channelizing a lot of energy, which happens. It's an experience for myself. I strongly believe that we have the chakras and nadis, and we the prana or the energy actually is these nadis actually are the neural networks within our body, which I don't know if I'm sure there is a lot of research. It's very interesting to have this discussion, because there has to be an intersection between people who are emotional about faith and people, intellectuals like you, who can give us answers, because we need to understand, because we believe that prana flows through the nadis and it activates various chakras. And there are a lot of things like this. We believe there is a consciousness. There is something which has actually, I don't know about the Big Bang theory, but we definitely believe that there is something, there is a force which has actually created this universe. And I definitely believe in the upper force, a God, in whatever formless, because I'm not religious like you, but I definitely do believe that there is something which stirs this thing and does so many things in the universe, which keeps every one of us, a frog or a bird or a dog, or he dwells in everything, this force, this life force. So I know there are a lot of questions which may come up when I speak about all this. the scientists, the scientific world may have some answers for so many things which I don't. I mean, I'm not saying that this is a foolproof system I'm following, and there are a lot of things, a lot of loopholes I know, but definitely they will be very interested in understanding how this is. Are there answers for have you all done enough research in your scientific world to give us answers to all these questions? The simple questions. I'm not talking about people who are blind in faith. That is another thing. People, they have, so they are, I'm very happy they are steeped in faith, but they go and do all the rituals, they sometimes which are actually senseless in many ways, because they need to actually first work with themselves. But rather than themselves, they're doing everything external. So I'm not talking about that, but there are some answers we really need to have. So maybe it will be very interesting to see. At a later date, I would like to actually make notes of what are the questions I have. And maybe if we can have answers for that, it will be really eye-opener for a lot of us in this thing who do not understand the scientific world.
Yeah, on this point, I actually just remembered something. So a few years ago, I would say 12 years ago, Dalai Lama used to host a conference in India every year or every couple of years. And he used to actually invite very well-known scientists from all over the world. And coincidentally, a person who received Nobel Prize this year for quantum experiments, um, what's his name? The Austrian guy. Anyway, it will get back to me. As you can see, I forget all the names. Anyway, so he presented. So what you will be able to find those conferences actually recordings on YouTube. Maybe I can share later some of those like links. But it's actually, this dialogue is extremely useful, I feel, because there are so many people who really want to understand and kind of just follow blind faith. I'm completely with you on this, and I feel like there are rational ways of actually uh, kind of exploring this particular problem. And what I feel is that obviously there are lots of things that scientists have not yet accomplished, and there is a lot of, the list goes on forever. So, as you mentioned, there are lots of things, but there is one thing that I want to say when anyone talks about this topic. I don't know if it's a bit too technical, but let me try maybe for 5 minutes. If it starts going becoming too complicated, then I'll stop. I want to talk about quantum field theory.
Thank you.
Not in a okay. The reason I want to talk about it is because currently, when people might have heard about this LHC, this accelerator which accelerates particles with crazy amounts of energies. They hit together, like they look at what happens after they collide, right? And so all these particles, what they are trying to see is that when different particles kind of collide with each other, what comes out of that collision is what they are trying to explain, right? And what they have done is that in last 100 years they have actually started going to higher and higher energies, right? Reaching the energies where we can only think of, uh, we can only imagine basically the world, uh, nothing at the moment, whatever we can experience is working at that energies. When I say at that energies, it's like you can think in terms of temperature, let's say. Okay, so whatever we can think of, like the surface of sun is around few thousand degrees Celsius. I'm talking about temperatures that are like billions of billions Celsius, right? I mean, really high temperatures. That these are the temperatures, at least people say, the universe was in the initial phases of the universe when everything began. That's why people call it a big bang. It was very hot soup or something like that. Okay, anyway, so the way they explain all of this, how the particles collide and what comes out of it, the theory that they use to explain this is called as quantum field theory. Okay? So this is the theory that is very dear to physicists actually, and this is the bedrock of physics, which explains everything that is that is physics is made out of, right? I mean, it's a bedrock, and the the theory in one way is fairly simple. What it's doing is it's actually trying to explain what happens when two particles come together. Okay, two particles with different properties, right? This particle is, let's say, positively charged, or it's moving in a certain way. This particle is moving in a certain way. This particle has a slightly different mass. I mean, mass is again some effective term, but let's not go into that. So what this theory is telling you is that if we have these two particles, if they come together, how they are going to move away. It's as simple as that. Then you add more particles, and then you can calculate everything, and that's how the universe is working. So you can explain many things, or physicists like to believe that almost everything, with just these interactions. Obviously there are lots of things that we cannot explain, and people call it emergent phenomena. Okay, so by that, what I mean is that in principle, in order to explain what temperature is, you need to actually track all the molecules in this room. You need to track them and how they are moving in order to actually come up with something that resembles temperature. So temperature is basically how fast the molecules in this room are moving. But people were doing fine even when they did not know about molecules. So temperature, we call it as an emergent phenomenon. Okay, so you don't need to know everything about the system that is actually causing it. You can explain many things, and then you can explain pressure, temperature, and all those things, like uh, all those effects. These are known as kind of emergent phenomena. You don't need to actually look at how the particles are hitting each other. You can explain these are emergent phenomena. So physicists like to believe that all the phenomena, including consciousness, are all emergent phenomena. So you start with all these interactions, and so when the interactions become very complex, then some emergent thing starts to appear, like flock of birds, right? The flock of birds is made out of individual birds who are actually kind of roaming around in skies, but you can see that it's very synchronous, right? It almost feels like it has its own identity, and that's the emergent phenomenon. So in principle, what is happening is just one bird following the other bird, right? So that's how the particles are behaving. But when you look at it, you will feel like, oh my God, it has its kind of presence, which is different from an individual bird. And that's how physicists like to explain all these emergent phenomena, and that's how they plan to explain consciousness.
But you also told that in quantum physics or something, you told that they still believe of universal consciousness.
Okay, so that's like a different perspective, I would say. But okay, the reason why material, so even when you are rational, there are two perspectives, right? You can be a panpsychist is the word, where you believe that there is something more to the material world, versus the other perspective would be that there is nothing but the material world. Everything is material, and material world is what we have got. Okay, and frankly, I want to be the first kind of person who believes that there is something beyond, but I'm not able to rationally justify that, frankly, if you ask me, because whatever that has measurable effect, or non-random, I should say, effect on anything that I do or anyone does, is in principle measurable. You don't need to see it, right? I mean, you can't blame science by saying that if you can't see it, you can't measure it. No, that's gone. I mean, we have built so many crazy instruments and stuff like that, that basically, as long as we can measure the effects of anything, like dark matter, I don't know if if many people might have heard this more. We can't see it, right? But we can measure the effect of it. Right? So as long as anything is having effect on me that is measurable and consistent and non-random, it's part of physical world. It's part of science. If it's random, then anyway, no one cares. Like if I pray and random things keep happening, if I pray and something happens, if some other person prays and something else happens, then I mean, then it's all random, and then it doesn't matter anyway. If there is a non-random effect, then it makes sense, right? So so then basically my point was going to quantum field theory. The reason why I wanted to go there is because what the perspective here is that the energies at which everything is working in our world at the moment on Earth, let's say, physicists have explored those energies. We know the couplings perfectly well, like how any two particles that we know of interact, right? Now, I'm not saying that physics is done. We don't understand many things. But the reason why we don't understand those things is because those things are extremely hard to explore. By that, what I mean is that the reason why we don't understand dark matter is because it interacts so weakly with normal matter that it does not make any difference, basically. And that's the reason why we are not able to see it. We are able to see gravitational effect of it on very large objects, like galaxy level objects, billions of stars. But again, the effects are so minuscule that we are not able to test them on Earth. The point that I want to make is that the energies at which everything is working, it feels like we have figured out all the interactions of the. Now there is a counter argument against this, and the argument is what is known as strong emergence. I'm talking too much, so please interrupt whenever you want. So these two theories, one is called weak emergence. By weak emergence, what I mean is that at the fundamental level you have these interactions, but because of these interactions, when they become very complex, there are some emergent phenomena that you can see, like superconductivity. Like these are all emergent phenomena: superfluidity, superconductivity, and temperature, all those things, right? So these are all emergent phenomena, but these are weakly emergent. By weakly, what I mean is they can be explained in terms of what lies underneath the layer. Okay, they can be explained with individual particles. Okay, there is another thing known as strong emergence. Okay, and many philosophers like this term, and many people who actually want to believe that there is something beyond physical world definitely like this word terminology. And many scientists feel like people have disproved this terminology. I don't feel that people have disproved it. And the terminology, what it means is basically that when things become very complex, maybe there is strong emergence. By that, what I mean is that it affects the things in their underlying layer. By that, what I mean is that, let's take an example. If I think in a certain way, I might be able to change how electron moves in my brain. Is what is known as strong emergence.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you tell this to physicists, they're going to say, but we have looked at all sorts of interactions and we would have seen this. And then there is locality. I mean, there are all sorts of principles on which physics is based on. And if you ask physicists, then they would just say, okay, so let's have a theory. I mean, put together a theory which would explain how all these things happen, right? You think of something and then something else kind of almost like percolates, goes to. And so this is what people call strong emergence. But I feel like some of the philosophers make this point that physicists have only tested their theories in extreme conditions. By extreme, I mean when only single particle interacts with another particle, or like fairly simple scenario. When particles come together, when the things become extremely complex, maybe something else happens and we haven't actually explored that territory. Now, that's a very slippery slope, I feel, because initially we could not explain what happens with two particles. Then our computational skills and calculations evolved, and then now we are explaining 10,000 particles, right? It's still not the world, but it's 10,000, right? And we have not seen anything. So it's just like, if you just extend it, if you just extrapolate it, I feel like there is a very little chance that we'll be able to find strong emergence, but we have not ruled it out. Okay,
So,
maybe it happens. So this is all. I mean, there are all fantastic things that actual philosopher and scientists. So I'm happy to say that there are people who are exploring all these aspects, and my feeling is that there has to be a really what a healthy dialogue between philosophers who feel like there is something beyond physical world, like yourself, like people who meditate regularly, like people who like. I think the dialogue is essential because I mean there are things that I mean every experience changes brain, right? There is no doubt about that. Everyone now. Me talking to you at the moment is changing my brain. My brain is so flexible. The way it changes brain is like multifold. But let me give you an example. So what is happening is my neuron, every time I see Vidisha, some of my neurons are going to fire. That's how I recognize Vidisha. Right? But now talking to Vidisha in a certain way, uh, exploring different topics, every time the set of neurons that that are talking to each other, it changes every time I learn to play a new musical instrument. My brain changes. It's very flexible. Every time I learn to, let's say, sing in a particular way, my brain changes. I mean, it's extremely flexible instrument that we have got. So it has got amazing capabilities. I think if you ask me, being a rational person, where people get it wrong is that since I have this kind of control, that doesn't mean that I understand something beyond my brain or control beyond my brain. That is where I feel like it's still like, and these days, if you ask neuroscientists, no one would say that you cannot control your brain. Of course, you can control your brain, but what does that mean? What does that entail? I mean, what does that tell you about the universe that you are living? That's a very difficult question that, if you ask me, I would say that I'm not in a position to answer just by meditating, is what I would say.
True.
I need to do something else. I need to maybe explore my brain. I need to do something else. And I think that's the mistake that many people, if you ask me, I think that's the mistake that many people.
So that I will interrupt you a little bit. Incredible, and we are getting a lot of takeaways from this conversation, although we are really going overshooting time. But on to put it in context of faith, or some like one of the biggest takeaways probably I'll take from this conversation is to be able to be open, be able to keep it questionable. So even that's where probably the intersection, that's where probably the dialogues can happen, when everybody is willing to be open, like honestly open to question each other's things, and also understand as much possible also the limitations and loopholes and everything. It's nothing can be prescriptive. We are very limited on every side. To end this conversation, I'd really request you to share a little bit on your experience with the Wari and the Varkari Sampradaya. That maybe
the song which we are going to release on the 4th is an abhang, and it's Namdev's abhang, and we shot it at Pandharpur, at Alandi, and we associated with a lot of the Varkaris. So I would like you to share some of your experiences when you did the Wari. What was your personal experience? What is the experience when you saw people around in lakhs with that sort of faith? What went through your mind? Can you just share what it is all about, that experience?
It'll be very interesting to hear from you this thing, being such
I would say I'm not the right kind of person to share this. I've been to Wari like at least, I would say, 7 or 8 times.
Wow.
7 or 8 times.
7 or 8 times. I mean, only part of it, obviously.
So what is a Wari? Can you just tell what is a Wari?
So,
it's for the sake of our listeners.
So basically, there is this what is known as Varkari Sampradaya in Maharashtra mostly, where they actually go from one village to another village, from one temple to another temple, to visit their god. Basically, they start from, and it started back in, I think, 1400s or something like that. Actually 1200. Naneshwar and Tukaram and all those, like lots of saints who have contributed heavily, not only on the faith side of the society, but also on the social, like I want to say, like caste, like what I would say, like
discrimination. The discrimination.
Yeah,
which
exactly. So
they made everything inclusive. So they got everyone.
Huge contribution in Maharashtra, I would say, from this sampradaya, where they do not have any caste, anything. I mean, you are not rich, you are not poor. You can just kind of get together with all these people and everyone who just want to enjoy being together, and and it takes it takes 2 weeks to go from one end to another, and it's a long.
So it's from
journey.
Alandi. Is it from Alandi to Pandharpur?
Yeah, Alandi to Pandharpur, and it's a long journey, and people actually cook their food. They stay together. They sing songs, and obviously, my feeling about a whole Wari is that music in spirituality, music is a huge contributor and motivator. I mean, when you listen to these songs, you just go into trance. I mean, even a person like me, who's extremely rational, goes into trance, because I mean, you just look at these people who are just dancing and singing, and generally it happens in June, which is a month of monsoon. There are heavy rains, and people are walking and singing. And
How many people are walking?
Oh, lakhs of people.
Lakhs
It's
of
like
people.
it's beyond imagination. The scale is
So
just
they
beyond
bring
imagination.
so many people together. I mean,
And it's just fantastic. I mean, it goes through big cities, and people go to, and even from big cities, I remember like initial like experiences that I can remember. I was still in Pune. I was most probably like in third or fourth grade, and I went there to watch Wari people kind of singing and moving along, and then I walked like a few kilometers, maybe like 10, 15, 20, maybe a few kilometers with them, and then stayed with them for a couple of days. It was fantastic experience. I mean, it was fantastic experience. But being a rational person, I could not go beyond certain.
do you think you were being reserved on that?
Yeah, I mean things like tidiness or untidiness, I would say, like in India in general, when people come together, people don't think about how they're going to manage their waste and other things. It's just like these things are, uh, they always kept me busy, like my brain busy.
So you did the
And,
7 times after that, after this.
yeah, I was just trying to understand why these people are doing this. It's like,
So you did 7 times. Did you do the full Wari?
no. I never did. The highest that I have actually walked is a few tens of kilometers. I think that's it. I mean,
Okay.
it's like a huge journey. So I stayed with them. The longest was like 2 nights. I stayed with them, and I think that's the longest that I've done.
Mhm.
So I mean, it was fantastic. Uh, the good thing is it was completely what I should say raw faith is what you
Raw.
see there. What I mean by that is that there is no packaging of any sort, right? Maybe you you maybe you listen to people like so-called gurus or something. I don't want to be judgmental at all, but what I'm saying is that you see all sorts of what you call like there is no extravaganza, right? I mean, it's very simple and very raw, and that's what you get from Wari. Uh, there are no big holdings.
It is
There is
ecstasy,
no
ecstasy.
exactly. There is no
Probably
lighting. There
that's
is
where we are.
nothing.
I mean, the more we are doing this faith project, Siddharth, and I also being in a similar boat of yours, maybe if I could say, it has been this experience that you cannot deny, as you said, even being a rationalist or whatever. I don't even know the exact word to be used, but the real this rawness of the emotion that is so communicative from people to people, it is something
Exactly.
that you cannot deny, and that is where probably there is the biggest need of
Kind of.
having this spaces where we can try to reconcile and see, even if not reconcile, we're trying to coexist, where
Yeah. I
we are not
completely
letting
agree.
or putting down anybody, and we are looking it
And
as it is, looking at it as it is. So few more things I wanted to cover, but we talked
sorry
from
for being
no
so
no
No,
it
no,
was
talkative.
it is
we
something
discussed
very
from
important. It is something very important, and I think we should have many such conversations. And this project is about creating intersections and conversations. I think it has been a very valuable insight into the world of physics, into the world of facts, and people who have data and who want to prove theories and who have proved theories, and so many of us who just sometimes believe so many things without actually having any sort of background knowledge about it, and whether it is something which we can prove. So I think these conversations can really help each other. One last question. So does it mean that all physicists, I mean, do you think physicists actually have faith, all physicists, or everyone is a rationalist and
I mean, they are rational by profession. Now,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that you can't be. I mean, not everyone is atheist, obviously. Like There is a large percentage who are non-believers. I mean, but there is a different degree, I would say. Definitely, there is a huge degree. You will find lots of different like people. I mean, one more thing that I would like to add to this point is that human mind in itself is extremely contradictory. By that, what I mean is that we are capable of storing extremely contradictory ideas in our head, and we don't feel that it's contradiction. And that's our day-to-day routine. Like we talk to a person, uh, like we say certain things to a person who's just because that person is a brother of mine, whereas I mean unknowingly we won't actually use same things for a person who's not related to me. So what I'm trying to say is that not knowingly we are actually very contradictory in many cases. So even rational people, and as I said, our brain itself needs this biases and all judgments and everything. We need it. So if you ask me, all my values actually suggest that I should be a vegetarian person, but I'm not. I still eat meat, right? I mean, so there are contradictions, and every person has contradictions and stuff like that. So just to answer your questions, the 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 good thing is to know that the contradictions exist, and then to be as non-judgmental as we can be about everything, as open as we can be. I think that's where we can make progress in society, in anywhere. I think
that's a very exactly. I mean that open, and it has to be honest openness, like real openness. I don't know how to thank you, Siddharth. We talked about science to philosophy to consciousness, and to some extent a little bit about faith. I wanted to put it in context more into a little bit into religion and society, but we really don't have the time today. So we will continue this conversation with you and many more guests from all cross sections of our society. It's an incredible mix that we have here. We have Shri T.V. Ramprasad, an eminent Carnatic vocalist, leading us in this project. And I'm so glad that all of you are joining in some way and becoming a part of it. So we really want to, with the intention of understanding faith from a very honest, I would say rather scientific, if we know what kind of what scientific is, that definition, which is like totally unbiased and totally open to all kinds of possibilities, that is actually scientific.
Yes,
we want to approach this through that kind of openness and with a lot of empathy, real empathy, where we are able to we are open to understand and accept other people's feelings and values. So on that note, and hoping that we will continue these conversations, we'll bring in more of them. If you have one last word on faith, a word of faith to everybody, I'd really like to get that from you. What is faith to you? And
experience.
And if you would end this conversation with your words, that will be great.
No, I would say that it is indeed a blessing to interact with people like Siddharth, because I mean, this is what I am a student every day, and I believe that there's something to know and learn every day. And today I have learned a lot, and I'm sure that people who have been listening to this or will listen to this conversation will have a lot to take home. So thanks, Siddharth, for spending this valuable time with us. And we hope to definitely have further interactions with you and enlighten ourselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.